Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to my new video. Are you having trouble organizing your spending and also wondering why you're not making any savings? Well, then make sure you stay till the very end of this video, as today I'll be going through 4 easy to follow steps to help you clean up your spendings and also identify your savings opportunities. Yes, I know, all the lockdowns and layoffs are not making savings any easier. But since many of you are getting financial assistance from the government, like the workplace compensation and also the stimulus checks, all these really add up during this time. So it's a really good time to form clarity to your financial situation. And with that said, let's get this video rolling. If this is your first time watching my video, thank you so much for dropping by. And please consider subscribing to my channel as I go through topics ranging from personal finance to overcoming life challenges that are relevant to teens, Gen Zs, and the millennials. We are going through adulthood together. Alright, let's start with the very first step. And it's also a pretty fun one, and that is to identify and consolidate all your spendings. Forming clarity to what you spend on is perhaps one of the most important things that anyone can do to his or her personal finance. So the first thing you should do is to take out all your banking account statements, such as your checking accounts, credit cards, savings accounts, etc. and identify what you spend on and systematically record them down in your journal. If you feel like a little old school, feel free to write them down in a notebook. Otherwise, I believe most of you would prefer to record them down electronically. I personally like to use Excel or Excel equivalent software or apps for this purpose. Now, I recommend doing this step during the first few days of every month instead of at the end of a billing cycle, because different accounts have different statement billing cycles and will make things more confusing for you. Most statement billing cycles could literally end on any day of the month. So I recommend you to ignore when the billing cycles are being sent to you, but just go into online banking and look for all the transaction activities yourself during the first few days of every month. Once you have all the spending activities in front of you, I want you to separate them into 3 main categories. And they are fixed spendings, variable spendings, and one-time only spendings. We'll talk about the fixed spendings first. They are the things that you have to pay for every month. They generally do not change month over month, like rent, phone bills, internet cable, subscriptions, and insurance, etc. For a typical person, you should have around 5 to 10 transactions every month in the fixed spending category. So not a big deal. Just list them all out here. The variable spendings, on the other hand, is the complicated one. They're like grocery, dining, entertainment, shopping, etc. Things that you do spend monthly, but you can't tell roughly how much you'll be spending on. The reason why I said variable spending is a little complicated is that, unlike fixed spendings, where the number of transactions are typically on the low side, with some exceptions if you are a business owner, but generally speaking, your variable spending transactions would dominate your bank statements. For example, buying a cup of coffee, that's 1 transaction. Buying grocery for the week, that's 1 transaction. Buying takeout, that's 1 transaction. So the number of variable transactions will inevitably be dominating your bank statements. In comparison, look at fixed spendings. Your phone bills, 1 transaction. Internet cable, 1 transaction. Medical insurance, 1 transaction, etc. So within the variable spendings, I want you to have these 5 subcategories: groceries, dining, entertainment, cash, and miscellaneous. For a typical person like you and me, these 5 will be your main subcategories within the variable spendings category. The first 3 subcategories are self-explanatory, but also require the most work. Unlike in the fixed spendings category, where listing down all your transactions is not a big deal. There are maybe 5 to 10 transactions in every month, easily done. But grocery, dining, and entertainment transactions can easily reach between 30 to 50 transactions or more in a month. So it is okay to put them together. So just get your calculator out and add up all the grocery spendings first before inputting that dollar amount into your journal under grocery. Do the same thing for dining and entertainment. So dining, you can include items such as coffee, fast food, bars, and obviously restaurants. And entertainment, you can include movies and events. As for cash, just look at how much cash you draw out from your bank in that month. If you remember exactly what you spent on, great. Input those transactions into the other categories instead. But you most likely would not recall. This is also why I highly suggest you to reduce the amount of cash spending if you really want to have clarity in your spending. But cash transactions are unavoidable sometimes, so it's good to have this cash category for you to write on. but aim to reduce that amount in this section in the future. And of course, the miscellaneous subcategory is also pretty self-explanatory. Anything that does not fit into any other categories and are less than $10 to $20 per transaction. This dollar amount is very important, as you will see later. In our daily lives, we have many smaller and insignificant spendings. So the miscellaneous category is where you should place them in. Okay, so that wraps up the variable spendings. Now we're going to look into the next main category, the one-time only spendings. Remember I mentioned the $10 to $20 upper limit spending to be considered as miscellaneous spending? Anything more than that, you can place them here in the one-time only spendings. Expenses in this category are spendings that only happen once in a blue moon, like buying an instrument, paying the driver license fees, or credit card annual fees, something like that. If you put these into the variable spendings category, you're gonna have a very swingy month-to-month spending pattern, because obviously you're not gonna have this spending in the next month, and it will appear that you cut back on your spending significantly, when in fact, the difference was due to all these one-time purchases that you made in the previous month. So it's very important that you don't put these transactions into the variable spendings category. Notice that I do not have any shopping category. For me, I very seldom do any shopping. If I do, I either place them in the miscellaneous category or the one-time only spendings category. Of course, you may change all these categories to suit your needs. So that's all for all the three main categories of spendings. The purpose of writing all these down is so that you know where the bulk of your spending goes to. It sounds extremely obvious, but you'll be surprised how many people have no idea what they spend on every month. It is also good for you to find out if there's any unwanted spending that you are not aware of. Many services nowadays have subscriptions, and many people didn't realize this when they did some online purchases. And the subscription fees just keep coming back at you without you knowing it. So by taking a deep look into your spending helps you identify all of your spending. You absolutely have to identify every single spending. If you don't know what that is, call a bank to find out. This is very important. You need to know where you spend on. At this time, I want to caution you on one thing though, and that is not to rely on your bank to categorize your spending for you. Their categorizing features are not that accurate. For example, I was ordering takeouts from Uber Eats the other day, but it was categorized as transportation because Uber is a transportation company. But clearly to me, that was a takeout transaction. But anyhow, only you know best what your spending is, so don't be lazy. Categorize your spending yourself. Your bank cannot differentiate buying an Apple and a TV from Walmart. Buying a TV is not grocery. It should be a one-time only spending. So be very cognizant of your spendings. Now you have your spendings placed into these categories, your first step is done. And your second step is to do the same, but for your earnings. It is much easier to do than spending, so this shouldn't take too much of your time. So in a similar fashion, find out what earnings you have are fixed, meaning the minimum income you receive in a month. Anything more than the minimum is your variable income. Don't forget about your cash income too, if you have any. If you have any dividends earned, then make sure you check into your investment accounts also. You really want to have a complete picture of your income. So to sum up step 1 and 2, find out all your spendings and earnings and place them into fixed, variable, or one-time only categories and put them into your journal. So now I have a very simple math question for you to do. If you minus your total spending amount from your total earnings, and if the number is a positive number, you just make some savings. If you didn't make any savings, don't worry, we're now moving to step 3, identifying areas to reduce spending. Take a deep look into what you spend on in the variable category. This is the section where you can often make the greatest change. In most cases, your grocery, entertainment, and dining will be your biggest spending here. I want you to aim to cut that into half for the next month. It is going to be brutal, but if you don't set your bar higher, then you wouldn't make enough effort to get there. Even if you couldn't meet your target, but because you set your bar so high, you would end up having a better result than you didn't have a high target. Now let's take a look at your fixed spendings. There is often not much you can do here, with a few exceptions. You may consider changing your phone and internet plans to some cheaper ones. Another big one here, if you have it, is to reduce your loan repayment, especially if the interest is low. Then it is good to take advantage of the low interest by spreading out your repayment period even longer and make less payments at the same time. I know it's not easy, so try your best to set a target for yourself to spend less in areas that you have power to change today. And seriously, most spendings can be improved with clarity you are able to make changes much more effectively. Now let's move on to the next step, and that is to evaluate your monthly spending. The first few months will be a little messy as you'll be making lots of changes to your spending. But once you have a relatively stable spending pattern, you will then be able to tell how long it would take you to reach your savings target, whether it be your emergency fundings or a mortgage down payment. So let me recap everything I've talked about today. Number 1, identify all your spendings. Number 2, identify all your incomes. Number 3, identify areas where you can reduce your spendings. And number 4, evaluate your monthly spendings. Simple enough. The most important thing for you to do is to be consistent and do this every month. It's actually quite fun. I like doing it myself. And with that said, many great topics in regards to savings will be coming in the future, so stay tuned for that. And I hope you learned a thing or two from this video. And if you find this episode useful, please don't forget to click on the like icon and subscribe to this channel, as this will help this channel to expand and allowing me to make more videos such as this one for you in the future. Alright folks, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and peace out.